Hello and welcome to the Hollow Knight All Skills SGDQ 2018 submission video. My name is Mikali, and this is All Skills in Hollow Knight, a category that was actually created somewhat recently, within the last, I would say, 3 to 4 months, with the goal of being around an hour. The categories that we'd had before this were mostly any percent and 100%. And we wanted to find something that was in the middle, something that was a little bit longer than, half an hour, but also shorter than the 3 hours that 100% is. And so this category was developed. And so what this category is, it's, all skills, like I mentioned, but what we do in that is we get all spells, all movement upgrades, and all nail arts. Anything that would be considered a character ability, more or less. And so with this category, you're going to be seeing a lot more of the game, a lot more of the map than you would in just any percent, but not as much as you would in 100%, obviously. You're not going to be going to get all the grubs and do all those things, but you're going to get to see a lot more interesting areas around the map. So the opening to this category is very similar to any percent in that I would say the first 10 minutes is about the same, with some minor differences. We are actually going to kill the first boss of the game instead of just leaving his arena, and we also need to open a stag station that we'll be using much later in the game. So this category, besides being all skills, also has the glitch restriction of no storage out of bounds, which is the exact same restriction that I ran at AGDQ. And like I mentioned there, what this means is that you cannot perform storage out of bounds. And it's helpful to think of that as just one kind of thing. So no storage out of bounds. And essentially what that means is you're not allowed to open your map when going into a transition, and then to perform storage out of bounds, you just close your map at a certain timing, and that stops your character moving into the scene, and you are out of bounds at any transition. And this category specifically bans that, or this restriction specifically bans that. Although later in the run we will be going out of bounds, specifically in the abyss. There will be a couple out of bounds there, which will allow us to actually skip a boss fight, which is really cool. So this map overlay on the screen, I get this question a lot in my stream, but this map is only a graphical, it's a graphical artifact of interacting with Cornifer. This is something that I did cancel. You can remove this from the screen. Since this is a PB video, it is faster to leave this on the screen, but for viewer purposes, this can be removed. It just needs to wait for a second or so before going through the transition, and then this will be gone. So up here is the first boss fight of the game. This is False Knight. A pretty straightforward fight. He has 3 phases. And the only reason we're actually fighting this guy is to get his money chest at the very end. One bigger difference between this and any percent is with geo collection. Throughout this run, there will be significantly more geo collected, and that is mostly to pay for the stag stations that we need to unlock, because we're unlocking many more. We're also unlocking a couple benches that we don't in any percent, and we're also paying for an ability called Dash Slash, which we also don't get in any percent. So there's a lot more geo needs in this category, and towards the end of the run, the geo pathing is actually very tight. You get to about 30 geo from 0, which is actually which is really tight. So this is the fight right here. Each time you stagger him, he gets knocked down, opens up his face, and you just do that 3 times, and the fight is over. He breaks through the floor there. And that is False Knight. So then you can see the chest up there on the upper left. That is the goal right here. Contains 200 geo. Very necessary for the route. It's a lot of geo, especially early. And killing False Knight doesn't take super long, especially since we need to beat his first phase anyway. So adding the additional 2 phases doesn't add a whole lot of time. So up here is our first spell, Vengeful Spirit. And part of the category description is that you need to get the upgraded version, or the most upgraded version, of every skill that you collect. And so we're going to collect the base version of Fireball here, using the same trick that I used at AGDQ. Inventory drop into it, and then you can leave the building, but with a specific timing, you can keep your character visible here, which is different from the incentive that was done before, where you fought Hornet invisible. And so with that, then we can do float glitch up here through this room instead of climbing up the platforms. Then we come right over to the Balder here, protecting Green Path. And we can one-shot him with a Fireball here. And this works just because the Fireball at the very edge of its range will kind of stay in one position for a little bit there. And that was a Fireball skip that you just saw. The Fireball, this is also an NMG skip, but the Fireball has a slight knockback animation, and with that stalling in the air, you reset your acceleration from gravity, and that allows you to travel slightly further left and right than you would otherwise be intended. That one there only saves a couple seconds, but it is faster to do that. But like I was mentioning with the Balder, the Fireball at the end of its animation will stay where that Balder is, and since the Balder doesn't have iframes, it will continuously damage him until he dies. And right there was the first float glitch in the run. Well, the first of that float, where you slowly fall. And another float glitch here, P float. Just allows us to get up here by the Geo slightly faster. So then coming up here is our first diversion from any percent. It's a very small diversion, or I guess the second diversion, counting False Knight. But here we take the shortcut. This is also something we weren't able to see at AGDQ because of the invisible character. But here we get the slowly falling float, and then we land on that platform, and I intentionally look to the right there, because for whatever reason in this game, when you turn around on the first frame after an action, it releases your stored action, and we're not entirely sure why that works. It just does. So we're coming down here in Green Path to buy this Stag Station, and this is for the very end of the run. But it just so happens to be on our way to Hornet. So we just stop off really quick, buy it, and we're going to go and fight Hornet for Dash. Then when entering this fight, there's an interaction storage right there. If you double tap your quick map to interrupt the starting of that cutscene where she talks to you, you can maintain control of it, control of your character, and allows you to just get a little bit closer to her once her dialogue is done, and you can start fighting her immediately. And that was an example of the stun lock that you can do on Hornet. With her stagger counter, you just can keep hitting her over and over again and stagger her before she has a chance to do any attacks at you. So after we pick up Dash, we're going to save and quit here. And this will warp us back to our most recent hard save, which in this case is the bench we sat on before. And now this segment here is the exact same as in any percent. We're going to go down, grab Claw, and grab Dash Master. And that will allow us to dash downward to help control our float, and will also allow us to dash more often. Besides the fact that Claw is a required item in order to beat the game. Dash isn't technically required if you wanted to try and beat the game low %, but it's very slow to not go get it, so we just go get it right away. Plus, it's this is all skills, so you kind of need dash anyway. So this inventory drop here that you're seeing is done with the same storage that happens at Cornerfur early in the game, where upon landing you can press inventory to keep the map up but also retain movement, and that gives you the uncapped speed state that inventory dropping has, which is really useful in tall rooms like that, while we can still dash side to side and also accelerate downwards increasingly. So this segment would probably be a good section for donations. There's not a whole lot going on. Nothing we haven't really seen before. There is a nice little mantis pogo set up right here. Grab the third mantis from the right, and then with good timing, well, which I didn't have, but with good timing, you can pogo on them right up here to the left side. If you can get the third guy in the correct spot, you can do it right away instead of having to set up the backup like that. So right there was another case of interaction storage, and with interaction storage, you can essentially interrupt any pickup animation that you wish, and that involves claw there. However, during an actual marathon run, that would not be something I would be performing, because there is a potential for soft locking it there if you do it incorrectly. It's very rare for it to happen, but just picking up the item itself instead of doing interaction storage on every pickup is safer, because if a soft lock would occur there while picking up the item, you would have to traverse the entire area again. It'd be a huge time waste. So in general, this run is a little bit more dangerous than any % in terms of death potential. This is also one difference here. We buy this stag station for later when we have to come back and go to Crystal Peaks. But compared to any %, this run is a little bit more dangerous, especially once we get the Soul Sanctum. There's a lot of intentional damage that we need to take, and that leaves you at low HP for one of the more difficult areas of the game. So that can add a little bit of excitement and danger while leaving potential for a death. A death isn't the end of the run because there is a bench fairly close by. It is about a minute time loss per death, so things can be taken safely there, though. You can heal up, gather some soul F enemies. So here at Salubra, we use interaction storage right here to get out of her text, and we buy Shaman Stone, and then right there get Fireball storage, turn around, and we get Persistent Float. That allows us to float right up here. And right here in Blue Lake is a new strat called Water Walk, where we can get Airwalk off of the water there. I didn't get the super slide here. But by diving down and then stopping your movement at the perfect spot above the water, the game thinks you're on the ground. We're not entirely sure why, but it just does. So that was found fairly recently. There's also another glitch that was found about 2 weeks ago that we like to call Televator. You'll get to see that coming up in Soul Sanctum a couple times here. But what that does is it just warps the elevator straight to the top. But anyway, here's the Dream Nail sequence. Another required item to beat the game. This allows us to get into the Dreamer's minds and kill them. And it also, when you hit enemies with the Dream Nail, it will refill your soul meter, which is very useful, especially since spells are the primary form of damage in this run. So this is also another good time our donations here. We use a persistent float right there. And 6 nail swings to time the trigger there. Then we just dash all the way to the right, get the item, and move on towards City of Tears. So one thing that is possible with this run, and it won't be seen in this video, but one thing that's possible is a donation incentive for adding true ending to this run. And that would add an additional boss, the true final boss of the game. And it would add a small... It would add basically a float, but it would be another small section when we're in the Abyss. And I'll address that when we actually get to that part of the run. But it wouldn't be a significant addition to the run in terms of time. But I know from my own experience, it's been something that a lot of people were asking for, is to see the true ending of this run. So that is something that this run has as a potential. It doesn't add a ton of time. So coming down here, we're going to head into City of Tears. And we're going to go and upgrade our Fireball spell using elevator glitches to clip through the floor. So off to the right here is a safety bench that we could take. Obviously not going to take it in a PB video. So in this room here, after getting persistent float, I'm going to damage myself on the spikes of the elevator in a specific way. And now the game thinks that we are still on the elevator. And we looked into this, and what we believe for how this works is there's 2 separate state machines for the spikes and the actual elevator themselves. And so what we're doing here is we're touching the elevator, and then we're getting hazard respawn from the spikes. And what this is doing is it's setting our flag for being on the elevator momentarily, and then respawning us immediately. And that gives us the state of being on the elevator. So right here is Overcharm glitch. And what this does is it allows me to equip the 2 charms that we pick up here. And instead of taking double damage, we can have both of those charms equipped without actually being in the overcharm state, which is pretty cool. It works in the same way as a previous glitch in older patches, which is called notch duping. And how that worked was you could equip a charm. Oh, here's Televator, the first instance of Televator, by the way. Right there, just immediately teleports the elevator to the top. Like I said, that was found about 2 weeks ago. But for overcharming and notch duping, when you unequip a charm, the charm doesn't actually become unequipped until it reaches your inventory at the very bottom of the unequip animation. And so if we can cancel that animation like we do in this run by leaving the door, then the charm will stay equipped, but the overcharm state is refunded immediately at the beginning of that animation. So by separating those two, we refund the overcharm, but keep the charm on. And so right here was the second instance of elevator glitch. Same thing, we trick the game into telling us we're on the elevator still, and use that extra rising momentum from the elevator climbing to push us through the floor. And so now here is the biggest divergence from any percent. After getting Dark Fireball here, we immediately travel to Soul Sanctum, which is right here. And we're going to go and face the boss Soul Master, and this will allow us to get the next spell, Dive. So there's a lot of enemies here in Soul Sanctum that are very dangerous, especially these teleporting guys. A little mini boss fight here with a Soul Warrior. This guy dies pretty quickly, however, with our upgraded spell. We're not meant to have this at all at this point of the game. But the AI on these teleporting guys is very random. For whatever reason, they're allowed to teleport in front of you while you're dashing, which is probably the most frustrating part about Soul Sanctum. You have basically no control over what they're doing. So right there was an intentional damage that I just took to fix the bench storage that I had gotten when I did Overcharm glitch. And what doing that allows is for me to inventory drop later. That state is fixed in any percent by saving and quitting after getting Shade Soul, but since we need to do other things here after getting Shade Soul in this category, we need to fix that bench storage state in a slightly different way. So here's Soul Master. At the very beginning of his fight, I tried for it there, but missed it. You can get out of his opening scream and be able to damage him for free. That's why you're seeing this overlay stuff still on the screen at this time. So the main objective with this fight is to get double hits with your spells. I got a couple double hits on different attacks there. It's really convenient. And there we fix the graphical overlay. So that's phase 1 of Soul Master. Then he'll go into his desperation phase here. For a lot of casual players, Soul Master is probably the first major bump in difficulty for the run, or for their playthrough. And in the speed run, it does help a little bit that we have Shade Soul at this point, where casual players would not. Makes this fight pretty trivial. So there we just picked up the dive spell. Unfortunately, beating Soul Master and collecting dive there sets a hard save, so we aren't able to save and quit out. Which means we have to go through this entire escape sequence as intended. There's also a geo chest right up here, which we need for our geo routing. The movement in this area looks really cool when done correctly. There's a lot of random enemy mob spawns there, but especially these next two coming rooms are pretty fun to watch, I think. This room specifically. So after escaping here at Soul Master, it's pretty convenient, but the Watcher Knights are right next door. So after fighting Soul Master, we're going to head over there to the Spire and kill our first streamer and also kill the Watcher Knights. This fight is the same in this category as it is in any percent, because the loadout is the exact same. Or the major damage loadout is the same, I should say. Our primary source of damage here will be Shade Soul. However, there are a couple televator glitches thrown in here. Then that chandelier up top there actually crushes the Watcher Knight. You can see it in the background there before the fight starts. And that reduces the number you need to fight from 6 to 5. So right here between each spawn, you can see me using my Dream Nail on each one of these Watcher Knights as they spawn in. And that just gives me a little bit of extra soul. You can watch it fill up in the top left when I do it, but it gives me a little bit extra soul. Allows me to kill them a little bit faster. So here on the climb up to Lurien is perhaps the most fun to watch televator glitch. This is a very, very long elevator ride that now only takes a second. So another divergence from any percent after Lurien here. Instead of going and killing the other Dreamers, we're going to go up to Crystal Peaks. We're going to go through that segment to get our upgraded dive spell. And it will also allow us to get Crystal Heart, which is the Super Dash ability. There's some interesting glitches that you can do with Super Dash later in the run that we're not able to be shown off at SGDQ because we don't get Super Dash in any percent. But you'll be able to see those a little bit later in the run. Crystal Peaks is also a great exhibition of just some cycle movement, non-RNG cycle movement with the laser bugs. It's one of my favorite areas to do in this category. So right now would be also a really good time for donation rating. Not a lot going on between now and getting into Crystal Peaks. There is a slightly minor glitch that we do at the stag stations when we pay for the toll. Something that wasn't explained or wasn't done during the any percent run. We don't really have a name for it, but for some reason, looking down when paying for something significantly speeds up the animation. You'll get to see that here shortly. We're going to stop off here quick to get some more Geo. This is the Gorgeous Husk, a secret area in the game. This is an enemy that you would kill in any percent NMG, but we don't need as much Geo in glitched any percent as you do in NMG. So right here, after we pay for the toll, I'm going to look down really quickly. You can see the gate in the back goes away, and then the bell appears immediately here at the toll. We're not sure why this works, but for whatever reason, looking down significantly speeds up the FSM state. And also one other thing, FSM stands for Finite State Machine. This game is coded with a lot of FSMs in it. A lot of the code is out of the C# assembly, which is a bit strange, and it's actually the major reason why a lot of these glitches work. So here we're going to head to Crystal Peaks. We're going to go through the intended dive entrance here. Also another reason why we get Soulmaster early. This allows us to skip getting the lantern entirely in this run. There's another entrance to Crystal Peak where if you get the lantern, you can pay for a toll and get in here. So this is Crystal Peaks. Housing of the Crystal Heart. And one of the most fun climbs in the game. I do need to actually gather some soul here for a glitch coming up at the end of the area. If you're familiar at all with the NMG area, NMG part of the run here, this is what I'm talking about with the cycle base too. Sorry to skip thoughts around, but all those laser crawlers are on a cycle, and so you can do this specific area on the exact same cycle every time. Makes it very satisfying to do. But at the end of the area here, but right before Crystal Heart, in the exact same room that it's in, there's a whole bunch of lasers in a platforming section up there. However, we're not going to do that. I'm going to stop off down here on the left, initiate float, and open the gate at the same time. Then the laser section is up here in the room, but with float, we can come right down here, get airwalk, and we're just going to dash right across. Then while grabbing Crystal Heart here, we can actually get out of this stagger animation right away and start dashing through the room. So there's not actually a whole lot going on glitch-wise in the next couple minutes, or next minute or so, while we go get Descending Dark. So this would maybe be a good time for donations, or just to, of course we have to rescue a grub there. Maybe not donations during this dark room here, while we have to dash across. This area is a little bit dangerous because of that guy, that sniper guy. But there is some soul that you can farm before coming into this area, so that I'd be at full health. Makes it relatively safe. So this is the Crystallized Mound. This is where you upgrade your dive spell. Pretty fun little platforming section there. And for some reason here, when you pick up this spell, it's slightly different from other spells in that you can pause immediately after picking it up, which is not how any of the other spells behave. Kind of an interesting little tidbit there. So we don't actually have to get storage before we get that item. Still works the same. So we save quit back to this bench here, visit the stag, and then we're gonna go on a path here to kill the remaining 2 dreamers. We're also gonna have a stop in between where we can get the up spell, the Howling Wraith spell. This will be the level 1 version of the spell, and then we'll get level 2 much later. So coming up here, there's going to be an NMG skip to get into Fog Canyon that would not be done in any percent because we don't have Super Dash. It is slightly faster to do it this way because you don't have to get float and take forever to fall down. So all we do here is walk to the left and Super Dash off this wall right across the acid. This area coming down into Archives is also slightly different from any percent in that we don't need to use float to go through the area because we do have Super Dash. Also in that transition I just went in there, there is a bench up at the very top, so I wouldn't have, or I could save there before coming into this area. If I did die in the boss, then I could get back very quickly. So this is Umu. The reason why this is a Metroidvania. The ideal fight here with Umu is a 2-cycle. Previously, it actually was possible to 1-cycle Umu back before they buffed him. Umu was buffed in patches after 1.0.2.8. This run is run 1118. Once the Hidden Dreams expansion came out. And after 1028, they actually buffed Umu's health by 50 HP. And that took away our chance to one cycle him like we used to do. So there is an ideal fight there, a 2-cycle. And it's actually ideal here to get float after the fight to do this next segment. It's not required because we do have super dash at this point of the run. But it is faster. As you can see, we can just jump straight up and float all the way. Otherwise, you'd have to super dash from that wall on the right side to get across the acid below. But floating here is faster by maybe 5 to 10 seconds. So second Dreamer kill here, and then the escape from Archives. This is probably another good chance for some donations to throw them in here. There is another slight divergence here from any percent. I am required to actually get the bench up above at the top of Archives, and that allows me to save and quit back there after getting Wraiths. But we're going to take a little detour to go get Wraiths. It's actually kind of interesting when routing this category, trying to fit things in where you need to get them and also where it's convenient, because there's so many skills that are just kind of off the beaten path a little bit, and there's a pretty significant challenge in trying to find a good spot to put them in the run, especially when you need the first level of the spells to get the second level in a lot of instances. So like in the Crystallized Mound, you need a dive. You need a dive 1 to be able to even get in there. And the same is true for Wraiths 2, or Shriek. You need Wraiths in order to trigger the cutscene to give you Shriek. So here I just keep the float all the way up to here. It's a little bit convenient for the platforming. Then this little super dash all the way under the level. That's actually not that precise, but it's pretty cool. So here we are in one of the other mounds. I think this one's the Overgrown Mound. This is also intended for you to be here much earlier in the run, or in the game, progression-wise. And so there's just a bunch of these mosquitoes you need to kill in this arena, and then it opens up. We can inventory drop right into this, and save and quit out immediately, which is very convenient. You don't have to sit through that entire cutscene of getting the item. So here in this next segment, we're going to be heading through Queen's Garden and then into Deep Nest. This segment here is actually ideally done with the NMG skip to get across the acid. However, it is much safer to do the glitched method of floating. It guarantees the first try. And over average is probably faster because you're not retrying the glitch. Or retrying the NMG skip, I should say. So I actually messed up the spell a little bit there. I intended to do the fireball spell to cancel my float, but did the dive spell instead. And that just also shows that any spell you use will cancel the float state. You know, all other instances where I'd be canceling float, I'd been doing it with fireball, but this is the first instance where you can show that with dive it is actually possible to cancel it as well. So right here on the spikes, we're going to hit the respawn hitbox and get spawned down below by the spikes immediately. You can see we fell in like right there to the left, and it teleported us just straight down. So this next platforming segment is the exact same as in any percent here. There is a chance to use super dash here as well, but in glitched percentages, or in glitched categories, we need a little bit more soul to perform glitches, and so we use that segment there to build some soul, because there's some nice little green chia pets there along the way. So then here's Deep Nest. There's 3 rooms here that we go through. These are always tense, because if you hit any hazards in here, since I don't have lantern, it's going to spawn me all the way back at the beginning of the room. And you can kind of see them, there's spikes all over. So that's the entirety of Deep Nest here. We're going to head up and kill Hera really quick. There's also a little safety method we can do here. During this run, I believe I rely on a double hit. There is a way to double hit this top devout up here. Just like that. The second one double hit there. But during a marathon run, there's another enemy that you can dream nail for free. Get full soul and guarantee the kill up top without dying. So coming up next is the biggest diversion from any percent. After this point in any percent, you would go to the end of the game, since you've defeated all the dreamers. However, in all skills, we still have skills to get, including all of the nail upgrades, or the nail arts. Plus we need to get Eastman's Tear, Wings, Shade Cloak, and Shriek yet. There was a recent skip discovered in this category that skipped Hornet 2. And normally you would have to fight Hornet 2 to get an item called the King's Brand, and this allows you to get down into the abyss of the game. But we'll see a little bit later that we will not need that key. Here's another instance of using the look down. We're going to take this back to City of Tears, head to Kingdom's Edge. Then we get to do the very glitchy part of the run. Kingdom's Edge, usually when you're playing the game casually, is a very dangerous late game area with a lot of enemies that have a lot of health and can hit you very easily. However, in this category, we only need to be out here briefly, and so some of this damage I'm taking here is semi-intentional. Any damage I take here is not very dangerous because I'm not going super far into the area. And here's our nail upgrade here. We can use storage here on talking to him to get out of his animation. There's a small little cutscene that he has when he teaches you the nail art. But instead of learning it or watching that, we can just quit out immediately. So the next item we're going to go get here is called Eastman's Tear. And this item in the game allows the character to swim in acid. And the only way, or the intended way, to get to him is to defeat a boss called the Dung Defender. And to travel through the entire waterways system, the sewer system, and then get over there, and then you can grab Eastman's Tear. However, since we're not going to defeat Dung Defender, we have to be a little bit creative with the trigger that he has past him. There's a lever after the fight that lowers the water level in a certain area that allows you to access Eastman's Grove. We're also going to use float here to get into this a non-intended way. So right there, we dashed downwards, and then I pressed inventory there. And what that did was that halted my downward momentum, and that puts me just above the acid. So we can use float here to get into Eastman's Grove through the exit to the Grove. And we can grab Eastman's Tear while skipping a whole lot of events. That pathing that I just took is actually possible to do without any glitches. There's a couple of super dash, precise wall super dashes you can do, and there's also a skip to get into this area with the spikes where you can stall yourself midair with a spell, and then pogo off the spikes and dash again really quickly. So now we're gonna head down into the basin here, and we're gonna get our double jump ability. Normally for this ability, you're intended to fight a boss called the Broken Vessel. However, we are not going to be fighting him. It is kind of a bittersweet thing that we get that we skip Broken Vessel because it is a pretty fun fight. But it's a 2-minute time save to skip it, so it's definitely worth it. So coming up here will actually be the first instance of storage out of bounds. Or not storage out of bounds, super slide out of bounds, which is allowed in this category. So what we're going to do here, we're going to change our video settings slightly to make this trick easier. This also makes it a lot more marathon safe too. Messed it up first time. But one added side effect of super slides is they completely disable load zones. So if we get a super slide off of this enemy here, we go through the load zone there on the right, dash down, stop our momentum with inventory, and now we're on the outside of the level. And so what I'm doing here is, if you can picture the level space as just a giant square, I am now on the outside of that square, dashing across the very top. And I'm going to go and hit the load zone on the far left of this box to move me to the next room. So we dash down. There's the Broken Vessel fight on the right. We hit the load zone, and we're past it. So the out of bounds space is actually fairly simple once you know what it looks like. The level space, like I mentioned, is just a giant box. And then there's another space outside of that, which is another giant box. And this second giant box is just a large empty space. It does have a floor. It does have walls. And so you can fall all the way down to that floor and use that. And if you do get lost in the out-of-bounds space, you can go to one of the walls on the very side and find your way back that way by super dashing across. It's pretty interesting, actually. There used to be a kill plane down there in the out-of-bounds section. Here's another super slide out of bounds. This one with some upward momentum. This is a slight variation on the super slides that we've done before. This was a relatively new skip discovered here, and this one allows us to skip that key door to get into the abyss. So now I'm on the top of the level, traveling to the left, and I just dashed down right there. And we're going to fall all the way down to the bottom of the abyss, and we're going to hit the load zone on the left side here. And there we go. Now we're in the abyss without ever having to go get the key. So here's our second up spell upgrade here. This is Abyss Shriek. And there's a very interesting graphical glitch with this one that you can do. So if we get storage before going into this animation, we can cancel right out of it. And this is going to do some really weird stuff to our sprite. So since we left that animation way too early, that entire animation is not allowed to finish, and we just get to keep this one still sprite. This is probably one of my favorite glitches of the run, just because it looks hilarious. However, you can notice here that getting hit does bring your character model back, and so now I have two sprites. Still have the one that's stuck there, and then I have my main one. And this is a rocket jump. Using super dash storage and releasing the super dash at the same time that you jump, you can actually gain infinite height like that and move diagonally upwards. So that allows us to skip this entire platforming section to the top of the lighthouse and just get up there immediately. That glitch will be used a couple more times here. One more time, I guess, specifically to leave the abyss. So here, by inventory dropping into this upgrade, we just got Shade Soul, and we lost our active sprite, and so we're back to this one here by itself. So now that we have all the items that we need from the abyss, we're going to leave the area. And since we don't have the key to get out, we're going to have to be a little bit creative with leaving the area. So we're going to use the same trick that we used to get in to get out, but in a slightly different application. So one thing that we discovered recently is that your vertical momentum is conserved when you're super sliding. And this allows us to, like you saw earlier, get some upward momentum and maintain that. And that's how we entered the abyss. And we're going to use that here to be able to exit the abyss. I'm going to get some downward momentum from gravity before I hit this guy, and then use that to slide down and to the left and out through the load zone down there. This is also where we would get the item required to do the true ending of the game. We would do this skip, get out of bounds, and hit the load zone. There's a hidden load zone down underneath the floor below us here. And that heads into a sequence where you get an item that allows you to face the true final boss. And so adding on that potential incentive would not take all that long to do. So here I'm out of bounds on the floor, way down below the level. I center myself with that platform, do a rocket jump to the left. So now my character is traveling diagonally up and to the left. You can see the screen wiping there that's around my character. As soon as it gets to the left, I turn around mid-air. And so now I'm heading back to the right while also still going upwards. You can see me kind of bouncing in the corner there. I'm counting up to 12 right now. Dash once to the right and fall. And I'm now on top of the area. And so now we can exit through the load zone we entered, and we're out of the abyss. And of course, we still get to keep this funny sprite. So now you can see how close the geo routing is in the game, in this category. I'm only 30 geo away from 0 geo, and that is the last thing I needed to buy in the run. So right there, I just initiated a P float before talking to him, to the stag, and that gives me float here to be able to get up into a little hidden load zone up here. Right up here at the very ceiling of the level, there's a load zone. And this brings us up into Kingdom's Edge, or up into King's Pass, I should say, and the Howling Cliffs. And we need to visit this area to get one of the last 2 nail arts. Unfortunately, our fun little sprite is going to be gone after we save quit here. But it's a pretty long time to have this on the screen. It's my favorite part of the run, I think. So now if you can remember that very first stag station that I bought in this run, in Green Path, almost 45 minutes ago. Okay, a little shorter than that, but you get my point. We're going to head back there now, finally. And we're going to pick up our final skill upgrade. And then we can go and beat the game. This would probably be another good spot for donations here. Anytime that I'm kind of traveling like this is probably a good spot for donations. There's not a whole lot going on in this one specifically. That super dash there is 100% consistent. These guys are on the same cycle every time. Just a fun little platforming section to get over here. Then here is actually a little skip you can do with wings. You're supposed to go through another platforming section on the left side of this room, but you can just jump up to the exit. Nothing special required there.
I love gold.
So, now we save and quit back to the same bench at Dirtmouth. And we are right here to go and beat Hollow Knight. Now, this again would be another good example of how this donation incentive would work. This fight actually leads right into the true final boss of the game. And so, you get through the first 3 phases of Hollow Knight if you get the item required from the Abyss, and then you can fight the true final boss, Radiance. And that fight with 5 HP is a little bit more difficult because that boss actually does 2 HP damage every time you get hit. She has a lot of health because it's the true final boss, and I have no HP upgrades, no Spirit Vessel upgrades. It would be a pretty interesting fight to do. So this fight here with Hollow Knight is actually completely different from the any % one because we have more spells. And so instead of using only our Dark Fireball there, I'm going to be using Shriek almost exclusively because it does way more damage, except for when double hit chances are possible like there. And that is the conclusion of all skills, as demonstrated by this video anyway. The Radiance fight at the end of this would probably take another 2 minutes or so. But yeah, this is all skills. I'm Mickley. Thank you again so much for watching. Hopefully I'll get a chance to show this off at SGDQ. Be amazing. Have a good day.